Hey everyone, I'm Stephanie, and I believe that the right book at the right time can change lives, and that all readers should read children's literature, especially adults. So that's what we do here on the KidLit Love podcast. We celebrate all things children's literature: picture books, early readers, middle grade, and young adult novels for readers of all ages. In each episode, we'll talk with children's literature authors and discuss their books, their hopes, their dreams for readers, their writing process, and much, much more. Whether you're an adult reading to their inner child or connecting the young readers in your life with fantastic books, you've come to the right place. So grab a notebook to build your TBR, and let's get to today's episode of KidLit Love. Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of the KidLit Love podcast. I'm Stephanie Affinito, your KidLit loving host, inviting you back to another bookish conversation with a children's literature author. Today, I'm talking with Kam Redlawsk. Kam is here to talk about her debut book as both an author and an illustrator, titled YUMI Monster. This truly stunning picture book will inspire anyone, I actually say everyone, who has faced illness, loss, or any life situation that seems insurmountable. It's a journey into the emotions we feel when faced with unexpected challenges and invites readers to discover the beauty, magic, and adventure that lie beyond the fear in ourselves. I can't wait to talk with Kam all about this incredible book, so we're going to get right to the episode. Kam, welcome to KidLit Love. I am so glad you're here today.
Hello, I'm very happy to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
Oh, of course. I mentioned before we hit record that it feels like it's been a very long time coming, given my mix up with some time zones. So I'm excited. I'm also a little bit worried that I am not going to find the right words to adequately capture how amazing your picture book actually is. I'm going to try as we go through the episode, but I wanted to say that up front. I want listeners to hear it right up front. This is a picture book, unlike any picture book I have read, that has touched my heart, unlike any picture book I have read, and is going to be a book that is just hugged and savored and treasured in more ways than one. And that's what I wanted to start out with so that you know just how powerful your picture book was to me.
No, well, thank you so much. I'm so happy.
You're welcome. So let's start the good old-fashioned way, which is tell us a bit about you and your work and the journey you've taken to Yumi Monster.
Oh gosh, so I'm a Korean mixed Japanese adoptee. For years, I only thought it was Korean, and it was through I have a very rare and degenerative form of muscular dystrophy called GNE myopathy, and that was actually it's genetic, so it told me that I was actually also Japanese, because it's the second most commonly affected mutation is the Japanese genetic mutation. So now I say mixed Korean Japanese American adoptee. I was actually born in Seoul, Daegu, Korea, and I was an orphan at birth, and I lived in an orphanage for about 4 years. And then, as I always say, a white American family in Michigan imported me, and they already had three sons, so they were homemade in America, and I was the import. So yeah, I grew up and lived a very typical Midwest upbringing, had three brothers, did a lot of sports, was more of a tomboy. And then in my teenage years, I had been playing soccer for 13 years, and suddenly things were happening to my body, such as like my foot was dragging, which later I realized was called foot trot. And it just means that your ankle is like kind of very weak and it looks like you're dragging your foot and you have a limp. So it really began with that, and climbing stairs was suddenly weirdly difficult. And I was a soccer player and on the varsity team at the time. And I would be in front of the goalpost and try to shoot a shot, and I would think kick, but my leg would just not work. So long story short, obviously something was wrong. Basically, nobody would believe me, including doctors and family. And when I became old enough, probably in my early 20s, I was starting my college career, my college life. That's when I took my own advocacy in my own hands, and I began a long journey of figuring out what I had. And six diagnoses later, realized I have It's super rare. At the time, it was 1,000 people in the world were affected. A very rare form of muscular dystrophy. And they basically all said, quit college and give up on any idea of your future. And I didn't listen. And thus, after that, it's been about like 25 years of just living life very wildly. I travel the world in my wheelchair. I'm an advocate. I accidentally fell into advocacy when I moved to California to escape the winters as I was walking with a cane. And then I landed in California, and that's when I met my first patient who's like myself with the same condition. And it opened up a whole new world, and I fell into advocacy, and then I fell into art, and a long journey that fell into today, YUMI Monster.
Mm, I love that live wildly. Yeah.
Yes, it's been a wild time for sure.
So, in terms of the art that you did before Yumi Monster, I would love to know a bit about that aspect of your work before we dive into your first book where you do both of the things. Tell me a little more about that.
Yeah, so I'm glad you asked about that because that really is the precursor to everything. So I've always been interested in art as a kid, and I did know how to draw, but it was industrial design. That's what I went to college for. I majored in car design. So I didn't have any illustration background, and it sort of happened. I became a self-taught illustrator. And how it happened is when I met those patients who are actually two brothers, a doctor and a research scientist who have the same condition as me. They had a nonprofit and they asked if I could, design their brochure. And I was like, they saw that I was a designer and I was like, sure. And then just like my personality, which can be intense, I turned it into a whole branding campaign and launched it at Los Angeles Gala. And I redid their website because it was Persian in their website because it predominantly affects Jewish Persian first. So it really lived in that community, my disease, until I came around. And most people didn't know, despite it being so rare, it affects a really diverse group of ethnicities, like basically everyone. So what I did was make it more inclusive and introduce like this affects a lot of people. And the fact that the plight with where rare diseases is the lack of awareness, it was my um, idea or feeling that I had to share my story and other people,
Yeah.
patient stories in order to really reach people. And then I was running the nonprofit and I realized people don't respond to medical jargon. So I started a blog. I was the first blog in the world with someone with my disease to start kind of vulnerably sharing the intimacies related around progressive condition as mine. And then I thought, well, some people are more visual. So I thought I would start doodling. And so I started illustrating, and all my illustrations are either inspired by my progressive disability or experience with being an adoptee. And that's kind of how that all started. And so I've been illustrating, and then one of the illustrations I did, someone was like, "Oh, you should make that into a children's book," and that became You, Me, and Monster.
Oh, and the rest is history. Now, I do plan to ask you about the gorgeous illustrations in the book, but before we get to the pictures, I'd love for you to give listeners an overview of the book, a little sneak peek into the book in your own words, what Yumi and Monster is about and represents.
So Yumi Monster is basically a little girl that with pink hair who's a representative of me, and she has a typical childhood running and skipping and playing. And then one day, about the same time, her parents tell her everything is going to change. Um, she sees this forlorn, cute and sweet monster that shows up at her window, and she just doesn't understand why he won't leave. And he's really sweet, and she keeps telling him to go away and he won't. So she decides she concocts this plan where she's going to take him into the woods and leaves him and avoid him, much like so many of us do with our emotions and struggles and difficulties. And then she soon realizes, oh, this guy is not going anywhere. He is forever a part of me. So she has to learn, go on this journey with him and then learn to accept him and herself.
Yeah. That was such a good, well, you are the author, so you would know how to say it in such a beautiful, concise way. But
I've been
what
practicing.
as a reader, as I was reading, I kept wondering how you did it because this is a big topic, right? This is not, a light and fluffy, book about cupcakes or something that might be in children's literature. It's a big topic, but it's a topic that many kids face. It's a topic that many adults face. And I really was just so blown away how you did it in such a kid-friendly way where the lesson came through that, you might be dealing with something hard, but that's not it, right? There's something else that you might learn from. We'll get to the last page in a minute, but I mean, I imagine it's your own experiences that allow you to process them and then put them on the page in such a way that kids are going to walk away and understand. But how exactly did you kind of conceptualize Yumi and then Monster and then the Shadow? And I would love to know a bit more about the process of how you got it to be such a place where kids can walk away with that really big understanding without being overwhelmed.
Yeah, so that was one of the biggest fears is because I'm not a children's book author or illustrator. And so actually it took years to even begin on the idea due to lack of confidence.
Hmm.
So it really began in 2012 when we had just moved to San Francisco, my husband and and I had fallen and he was working an hour away in San Mateo and I was living in Berkeley. And I had fallen at that time, I couldn't get up anymore by myself. I was walking with a cane and leg braces, just on the cusp of going into a wheelchair. And so I called him because we didn't know anyone and I had to wait an hour for him to come get me. And as I'm waiting, I just saw, one of the things that's the results of progressing is my imagination has heightened. People often look at disability and they just see someone that's void of something, but they don't see what we've gained and because of that kind of perspective or life. So I'm laying there, my imagination goes wild, and I'm thinking, oh, I suddenly see this furry gray foot pop out from the corner of the door, like he's just like peekabooing, and I'm like, oh, I was like, that he's the reason for all my falls. So when I got up, my husband came and picked me up, I drew out the original illustration, and then a lot of people said you should make that into a children's book. And the idea was the monster was the personification of my rare muscular dystrophy that follows me around, and I go through all of the emotional stages of, anger and frustration and sadness and grief, and not understanding why this guy just won't leave me alone. And so, it took years to even begin. I think I started beginning drawing on it like 6 years later. And it took a couple years after that to even start looking for an agent because I just didn't know what to do. But uh, in general, the fear of not being a children's book author, or illustrator, and also hearing that's very hard to break into the picture book market, I was just like, well, how am I going to do this? So, but the writing, it took a long time. A lot of it happened in my head for like a couple of years. Like, I don't know how to write this because I was very nervous of like, I didn't want children to be scared of the monster. And I didn't want to portray disability as scary or a monster. Monster is merely a vehicle. There's lots of examples like Totoroy, Turning Red, where there's a kind of a monster creature kind of character that kind of hangs around a little girl. So
Yeah.
that was really hard. And I redesigned the monster character to make it super cute. I really wanted people to have empathy for him because, years ago when I do the original illustration, I had a follower who messaged me and she said, you know what, I've never told anyone I have bipolar. I'm, you know, having fragile thoughts about life. And I don't even tell my church because I'm afraid of people judging me. But then I saw your drawing, and I never thought to think of my condition as a relationship. And it completely changed how I viewed it. And so that's what I really wanted. What was difficult was, okay, it has to be at a level where kids can understand it and not even understand all of it. That's what I realized later. It's like some of my favorite books are books that really evolved with me as from a kid to an adult, where I understood it as I got older more. Like I hear a lot of people don't like The Giving Tree, but that was like one of my. I love that book. I just think I just thought it was so simple and so beautiful, and I really evolved in terms of its meaning for me as an adult. So
Yeah.
that's what I realized with You Mean Monster later on. I was like, they don't have to get it. I just didn't want them to be afraid of monsters. So the idea is she's going on this journey. In essence, they're going to get that aspect. She's struggling with something, and then at the end, she, comes together with him. So that was the main part. But
Yeah.
the bigger part was I also didn't want to talk down to kids, and I also wanted it to be accessible for adults. I wanted adults. I wanted to be more of a classic and a modern fairy tale where anybody, a child or adult, because I really view us adults as children inside. We're so connected to who we are as kids in terms of our emotions and our past, and memories and struggles that we may have. And so I wanted it to be something that anyone could paint their story onto, their shadow onto, anyone. So while it was about disability, I wanted it to be also neutral enough where people could understand that, oh, I feel like this when I'm having a struggle, I feel lonely. Okay, so now I understand why maybe a disabled person would like accessibility or would like to be able to go out of their house or would like to have equal rights. Like
Yeah.
that person feels lonely and they're trying to go through this new life that they didn't ask for. And so that's ultimately what I was trying to do.
Yeah. Well, mission accomplished, times 100, and all of that. I think I agree completely with you. I think all children's literature, but especially picture books, just have a place in every reader's TBR stack, until the end of time, because we all have those inner children, right? That are still there, that still need a little bit of soothing, that still need something. And for this book especially, any reader, young and old, who is going through something or is faced with something is going to find something on the page to help, whether that's in a more abstract way if they are younger, or in a very direct way as an adult who understands the context, about the book. I usually don't like to give spoilers about the book, but is it okay if I read one of the sentences on the last line?
Of course, the most important sentence.
Oh, it is. And it is the sentence that, while not all readers will cry when they read picture books, I'm just an emotional kind of reader. And I teared up at this line because it meant so much to me personally. But that last line is, I am only me because of you.
Mhm.
And you mentioned that going through the phases of frustration, of anger, of grief, and in the book, the phase that Yumi gets to is this acceptance and this like I told you I'm not going to have the right words because this was such a powerful book to me, but this idea that I'm good, if not better, and okay in every sense of the word, and I am dealing with this. And that line just went straight to my heart.
Yeah, the last line is the most important line. It was actually one of my early lines that it came to my head. The way I tend to write is I have very audible thoughts. So everything is streaming through my head, and I feel like I'm just transcribing them. So what I'll do is when I was writing the book in the beginning, I would just write lines that would pop into my head. And that one was a very early line. And it was meant to say, there's this favorite quote of mine, one of my favorite quotes by Carl Sagan. He basically says, the beautiful thing about a living thing is not the atoms that go into it, but how they're put together.
Mm,
And so this idea of it's so hard to accept who we are. And acceptance doesn't mean that we still don't have struggles.
right.
It just means for someone like myself and in general for disabled people, as well as also a an Asian American adoptee, I've kind of lived on the outside since I was a kid. I lived in an all-white community, then I became disabled. And so it becomes very easy to dislike who you are, which is much of what I went through as a child. And then as an adult, you become disabled and you believe all of the commentary by society, like my doctor's telling me that my life is over and this kind of stuff. So you really go through life being told that you're not acceptable. So the idea of like, I'm only me because of you is to, even though all the things of our life we might not have invited or particularly liked or necessarily wanted, they are the things that make up who you are. And each of us are a very unique copy. And I think that's what's most special is that we're all so different.
Yeah.
So that line was really important to me to end on that. When I was writing with the publisher, they were recommending, like, oh, what if we add more after that? Or even they wanted to add more characters. And it was really important for me to only have Yumi and Monster because it's really just about Yumi.
Yeah.
Monster is technically, is he really there or not? Much
Right.
like where the wild things are. Obviously, there's an inspiration behind that. Like, was it real? Uh, but you know, I wanted it to end on that line because that was the most important line. That's what the whole book is about. And I think that's was really important for disabled or not. It's just such a hard thing for all of us. All of us, whether we're disabled or not, I think even have difficulties being in our bodies and
Yeah.
minds. And so we're always comparing and we don't like the things about us. So yeah, that was the most important line.
Yeah. I'm so glad that your view won out because I do love that powerful ending between the two of them with that line, I think was the absolute perfect way to end it. Now, I want to make sure that I ask you about the beautiful illustrations. There is something so immersive about the way that you have drawn this, but the color palette of the dark grays and the whites, and then the pop of color. I know listeners can't see it. I'm hoping they will. They'll go pick up a book and they will look through it. But can you talk to us about how you brought the story to life visually in this way?
So I always wanted to do black and white. That was the original illustration too, and just a pop of color. It's kind of my the way I do industrial design, the way I design products is I like a very one form that's very noticeable, and then everything is details after that. So a pop of color, a neutral color for the product, and then pop of color for its branding element. So I was told by a lot of people because I was kind of like shopping it around my manuscript to other children's book people before I started looking for an agent. And a lot of them said, yeah, it's not going to work. They're not going to accept it. Um, your style, they're not going to accept. Also, the color palette, they're not going to accept. They rarely accept a black and white. And so I've always loved black and white. That's like my favorite sort of base color and kind of the way I do my illustrations too. I tend to do more simplified, less is more type of stuff. So with this one though, I'm more of a line artist with my personal illustrations, but this one it wanted to be more rendered and animation like because I originally saw this as an animation. I see it as a moving film in my head first, like I see a lot of things. So after this, I'm hoping to try to pitch it as an animation because one, I don't think I've seen a feature that has a disabled character, and I think it's time. But also, I think it's just it would be it's like a sort of like a Calvin and Hobbes meets adventure, but more sentimentality. For the animation, I actually see it more as a little bit more Coraline, like a little more darker. But for the book, I went lighter, and I just really wanted a neutral. A lot of the decision too was also based on like what would be easiest for me and adaptive as I was going through the progression of my
Mhm.
condition because I finished this book a year ago and I can't even now hold a pen to sign my books. So I do a custom stamp with my signature. But yeah, so that was really the idea of choosing the style, creating it simple. I wanted the environment to not be busy. I really wanted the characters to be the more focus. So that
Yeah.
was kind of a lot of the background decision making.
Well, that next step of animation is ideal, and I'm glad you said that because the unique parts, a couple of times in the book, that first page when I turn it and wasn't expecting, you have like those blown up panels that do just help it move and visualize in your mind. So you're right. Next logical step. Let's
Oh,
hope
the
that comes to be.
the manga, you mean the
Yes.
comic? Yes, I didn't
Yes.
think they would accept that too. I was, thank you. So I, because it's a little bit inspired with Asian, if people can see it. And I thought that would just break up the montage rather than doing a
Yeah.
traditional children's book style where you have like spot images of the montage. I was like, let's make this in a manga. And I was so happy my editor was love
Yeah.
it. So I was like, wow, okay. I
I
got to do
loved it too.
whatever I wanted. Yeah.
Yeah, I loved it too. All the pieces just come together so that you truly are feeling, really feeling and imagining that story inside. Plus, I love the end pages, the bright pink and the characters kind of stamped on there. The whole book was a beautiful experience.
I'm so happy that you liked it.
Yes, I loved it. So, as you think of this book going out into the world recently and getting it both into kids and to adults' hands, what is your hope for the book or your hope for readers who have the chance to read it?
I think after I finished it, even some elements of it surprised me, and it kind of became like a thesis for like my years over my life over the years, and what the basic idea of what I've come to. But there's a lot of like nuance in it too. And the cornerstone of my advocacy is, while I do, rules of engagement and policy and accessibility and socio-political disability justice and talk about all that too, the real cornerstone of my advocacy is vulnerability and talking about emotions and being real about that. And one of the things that I found in the disabled community, while it's important to have pride and all that, I completely agree. There is a little bit of an element that over the years I've seen it's a little bit toxic. I hate to use the word toxic, but positive, overly positive.
Mhm.
Meaning, even I had been uh, told I was being negative by other disabled people that I shouldn't be talking about the disabled experience like that. And I understand in some ways why that is, because when the social pendulum has swung one way so far for so long, it tends to maybe go a little bit too far the other way. In that disabled people have been evaluated and kept from society and kept from, arm's length, not seen as human. And so there's this element of we really want to show that we're positive and we're capable and it's not a sad thing and et cetera, et cetera. And what I try to do with my advocacy is teach nuance. Like, look, I can have sad days about this. It is not, I'm not going to mince words and be fake that it's hard progressing because you're constantly enduring stages of grief. But at the same time, it doesn't mean I can't live or be capable or that I don't have joyful moments or that I'm not living my life and passionate. So that's what I really wanted to show with the book, because when the monster, it was really important for him to only say, come explore. And again, my publisher wanted to add more words, and I was like, I really want him to be one word. I see him more as like a Wally character, where he's
Yeah.
fairly mute and he just likes to follow her around like a puppy. But come explore means in any situation that you're in, like with disability, we were told that's it, you're done. But if we just explore, and that's how I've lived my life, I've traveled the world, I've explored different things. Um, you can view your perspective and the life or the situation that you're in. It's going to tilt. The perspective is going to be different than what you thought it was, and you're going to allow all the other aspects to come in if you just explore the situation and explore yourself. So I think that's what I ultimately want people to understand is the importance of going through your emotional process. We so often we just avoid it. We put down emotions, and they are the origin of everything, from the leaders of our country to the leaders of the house. How we interact with the child self that we are. I mean, we're all going through it. The child is still inside my mind all the time. I'm still that kid. How we deal with that past in our life is how we end up becoming as a person. So I think it's just so important to deal with that rather than avoiding your emotions like she tries to do with Monster. You have
Mhm.
to face them on and then go through the grieving process, but then tilt your perspective and figure out, what can I make of this?
Yeah. And that's why it's the perfect book, no matter your age, because that's always a lesson that we can either learn or be reminded of as we need that reminder again and again and again. It's such a beautiful book, Cam. It's so beautiful. I'm so grateful to be part of launching it into the world with you. And I'd love for you to share with listeners where they can find you online so that they can keep up with you and see YUMI and Monster as it gets into the hands of readers.
Yeah, so I'm most commonly on Instagram under Kam Redlawsk. All my social media, whether it's Facebook, TikTok, or Threads, and then my website is just my name, kamredlawsk.com. And you can find Yumi and Monster everywhere books are sold.
Yes. I will put the links to both of those places in the show notes, and I'll certainly make sure that I link directly to Yumi and Monster in there as well. Thank you again. Thank you for being on the show, but gosh, thank you for just writing such a beautiful book that's really going to help a lot of people. It's beautiful.
Thank you, Stephanie. Thank you so much. It was so nice meeting you.
You too. And listeners, thank you for listening to another episode of KidLit Love, and I'll see you in the next one.